Hi, this is Cary Artac with Wicked Stocks, bringing you your Wicked Market Leaders on our YouTube channel for the week of Monday, July 27th, 2026. We go through about 10 markets here. I try to keep it at 15 minutes or less. Sometimes I spill over. So a quick thing before we get into the charts. If you're already a member, you probably know this, but just in case, we've now started posting a full written trade plan under each of these videos. So after you watch me go through Microsoft and Meta and all these names, you can go into your dashboard, click on Wicked Market Leaders, find this video, and underneath it, there's a written breakdown for every stock we cover. Entries, stops, targets, all of it, laid out in writing. So you don't have to catch it all just by listening. I know a lot of you don't want to sit there rewinding 5 times just to catch a price level. Now you don't have to. It's all there in writing whenever you want to go back and check it. So if you're a member, go check that out at wickedstocks.com. But I'm going to jump right into it. Microsoft Corporation, same setup really. We've been in this quiet phase, but you do have a ceiling of resistance between 414.40, low of the high, and 417.67, this former long-term channel bottom. This is sellable resistance, and below which I have to categorize Microsoft as being on the defensive. Now, we're in this sort of two-sided framework, no doubt. And I think over the next 3 to 5 weeks or sooner, we can fall back into the mid 340s, upper 340s, where you could bottom pick this market near term. But I do think as we continue, into later year, the 305.76 descending channel bottom wouldn't surprise me. I think you can play that now. With what does that mean? I mean, selling the 410s, 417.67, that could be then at that point reaching for, 250 strike out of the money puts. I think that there's the very real possibility we could continue south, and it's really a timing thing. If we were to test 305.76 over the next few weeks, which isn't going to happen, I'd say that could be a good low for the year. So it really is the channel bottom. But this descending channel bottom is converging with the long-term full channel extension in the low 250s. So wouldn't be surprised to see that. I don't think we're out of the woods for Microsoft unless we can not only close above 417.67, which would neutralize my bearish opinion, but also then closing above 461.82. I think this is the pull away factor as we continue into 27. This is also sellable resistance. We could top out here for a month or even a quarter and fall away. Closing above this channel top at 461.82 is the go long strategy for Microsoft long term. Until then, all those frameworks that I mentioned are valid. Meta, we settled above this descending channel top by a hair 3 weeks ago. In fact, I'm marking that high settlement price at 669.21 as part of the upward pivot as we continue into later year. But until then, this market is on the defensive, still below this channel top. We did close above it, but not by a 1% margin. So it wasn't really technically a valid buy signal. And then we collapsed back the following week. It held last week. And yes, we do have near-term support at 585.29, but I do think holding below 655.90 will keep this long-term channel bottom in reach over the next couple of months, 2-3 months, let's just say by the end of the year or sooner. This 503.14 level stems about 4 years of activity, is a trend-defining support level, can absorb selling through the rest of the year and well into next. In terms of upward continuation, aggressive gains as we move through the rest of the year, that is above 655.90, and I have it on this original chart here. Closing above 655.90, and at this point in time, if you want to throw 669.21, the high settlement price, in the mix as the level to settle above, but I do think closing above 655.90 is good enough. Last week's high is 655.88. So if we close back above this channel top, we're also closing above last week's high. I do think then within 2 or 3 months, 796.25 in reach, double top potential here, certainly on a monthly basis, possibly quarterly basis. But on the longer haul, I wouldn't be surprised by some point in 27 to see the 900 handle if we can close above 655.90 in the coming weeks. Let's move on to SpaceX. I just started covering this a few weeks ago. In fact, that is the wrong chart. I'll get to that in a second. This shows this down pivot that occurred about 3 weeks ago. We had the IPO low of 149.34. We pushed this high of 225.64, and we've collapsed back to this low area. We traded sideways for a few weeks, and then it was 3 weeks ago that we closed below this low. That was a sell signal unto itself. Anticipating, in terms of wave counts, we don't have a lot of structure here to go by. We don't have long-term trend lines and channels and Fibonacci's, et cetera. This is just a wave count, B minus A. So B minus A times 5/8 Fibonacci Classic is 102.19. I do think this is an area we could bottom out at this week, perhaps, and even perhaps through the month of August. I'll give you the buy side in just a moment. This is bottom picking near term. Bottom picking long term, I think, and quite possibly the ultimate destination is 73.04. That is the full swing, as I call it. B minus A takes us to 73.04. And that is, sort of a, this market loses half of its value from the IPO at around 73.04, actually a little bit higher. So I think this is an area that could contain selling through the rest of the year. Let's talk about, the buy side of the market in terms of, where I'm interested in buying SpaceX. Well, I've already given you the bottom picking area here initially at 102.19 and ultimately at 73.04 becomes, I might add, a 2 to 3 week target below 102.19. But if you're buying on strength, which I think is the optimal play right now, is to buy this on strength. That would be above 140.70. We're not going to see that this week, but this descending channel top can contain buying into August, and we can fall away from here to those price points I mentioned before. Closing above 140.70 signals a 2 to 3 week rally to 171.25. And I see this as our upper pivot point through the rest of the year. This is also 171.25, a level that can contain monthly highs, and we can fall away from there. Let's move on to Alphabet. Alphabet closed below this, what is this, about almost a 2-year channel bottom last week at 323, 326.36. And if you're looking at just the big picture, I think there's a certain case to be made for 243.49 by the end of the year, perhaps, where we could bottom out through the first quarter and even well into next year. Now, there are other levels in the mix here, and let me just jump into them. There's a descending channel bottom at 309.36. So if you've not gone short Alphabet yet, below 326.36, then you can. I think you've got you more clearance, if you will, with a settlement below 309.36. Then within 3 to 5 weeks or less, this 272.11 pullback low that was put out back in March would be expected. But I do think ultimately, if you're looking at the big picture, holding below 326.36 will keep 243.49 in reach. Let's call that over the next 3 to 5 months. If we close below 309.36 this week, that is more of an accelerated approach, really. It's a collapse below two meaningful support levels. And I do think 243.49 in reach within 2 to 3 months of closing below 309.36. So, there's another way to look at this. You're not long Alphabet below 326.36, and you are short Alphabet below 309.36. Where do you go long Alphabet? Let's jump into that chart right now. These are your upper pivot points. So there's your 326.36. That is that long-term channel bottom that I had on the previous chart. That's impossible to put them all on the same chart. It just looks like a royal mess. So if we do close back above 326.36, and let me just show that, if we close back above that this week, that neutralizes that sell signal and does signal within 1 to 3 weeks, 370.36. This is a newly formed descending channel top coming off that high from last May. Can contain weekly highs, possibly into later August. We could quietly trade in here for a number of weeks. I think the pull away factor to the upside would be a settlement above 370.36. So we'll be watching this on a week by week basis. If we were to close this week above 326.36 and then a few weeks later above 370.36, then I anticipate 435.91 and climbing this newly formed rising channel top. But these are the price points. Closing above 326.36, expect over the next few weeks 370.36. Until then, we are heavy below 326.36, secondarily so below 309.36. Let's move on to Amazon. Amazon tested this 5/8 Fibonacci a couple of weeks ago. That's from the May high against that more recent June low, and we've fallen away from it. We've even closed last week below the previous low settlement price. So I do think that this descending channel bottom at 213.64 should be considered attainable by the end of August or sooner. It does narrow by the end of August with this 199.08 formation. So this is your zone narrowing weekly that can absorb selling through the rest of the year. And we can even round up from here back to this high area within 3 to 5 months, perhaps, or longer. Certainly wouldn't want to hold Amazon below 199.08, but there's no point in going there. Let's take a look at the upside for Amazon. If we can close above that 5/8 Fibonacci of 258.31, then yes, this zone of resistance. You've got a channel top at 287.30 that actually held the May high, and then you have the ultimate channel at 295.36. This zone in reach within a month or two of closing above 258.31 and able to contain buying through the rest of the year. We could fall away from here well into the first quarter of next. Let's move on to Taiwan Semiconductor. TSM. So we're still in this holding above this long-term channel bottom. When I say long-term, this goes back to April of 25. So it's about, I don't know, 16, 17 month channel support. We've come close to testing 391.67. As long as we're above it, we can round out of here onto, well, this channel top. It's actually a trend line right now, but it's in the upper 400, low 500s over the next month or two. Now, 429.50 to 437.99. This is the low of the high, the low of the all-time high, I might add, that we closed below 2 weeks ago, and the high of the low from 2 weeks ago. So this is a zone that if we settled above would neutralize any downward tendencies. Now, I think the backstop for downward tendencies is 391.67. I'll just cut to the chase that if we close below 391.67 this week, I see that as a good high for the year, and that Taiwan should continue unwinding into the upper 200 region. 278.33 would become, I think, a realistic 3 to 5 month objective or sooner if we close below 391.67. But until then, this is solid bottom picking territory through the month of August and even into later year. And if we can close this week above 437.99, then I do see this channel top at 500.86 as a 3 to 5 week likelihood. It continues to climb. It can contain monthly buying pressures and is obviously an upward acceleration point as we move into later year. On to Intel. This is a monthly chart of Intel. It goes back over 30 years. You may be familiar with it because I've been showing it now for the last month or two. We hit a significant wave count when we put out that high in June of 139.57. You can do the math here. A minus B plus A, that is a full swing. And now we've collapsed back. We're presently below the June low. And by one measure anyway, on a monthly chart especially, when you close below the low of the high on the monthly chart, 98.33, and we are at the end of the month now. Friday will be the last day of July. If we close below 98.33, that is just an invitation for more selling pressures to play out. Now, I do have a stair-step approach. This is all long-term stuff. I'm going to get to the near term in just a moment. But 88.52, this 30-year channel top that we settled above a few months ago, is in itself a solid level to buy into as a day trader, 3 to 5 day swing trader. And we might even look back on this several months ago from now and say that this actually held selling pressures through the rest of the year. That's a tough call, but let me jump into the weekly chart because I think this is really our framework. 109.61, this is a weekly chart. We closed below it a couple of weeks ago, and I've been anticipating how the 63.83 to 71.55 region is in reach over the next 3 to 5 weeks. If we do close this week below that 88.52 30-year channel top I mentioned before, then yes, within a week or two, we fall into this zone. And I think this is a solid area to buy really for the rest of the year. 63.83 an extreme channel bottom, but 71.55, I'll take us back to this chart here, is in itself, you can go back to 2008, 2009. This is a nearly 20-year channel top that I think can contain selling through the rest of the year. This is a solid area. If we were to close below 71.55, this sort of church steeple rally just gives it all back. But I don't see that. I think 71.55 is the ultimate long-term backstop for Intel through the rest of the year and well into next, and we can round up nicely from there. Yeah, so I'm going to take us back to this chart because I think it just makes more sense. Holding below 109.61 maintains a 65.28 to 71.55 target, and that becomes confirmed really with a settlement this week below 88.52. Closing above 109.61, we revisit that 139.57 ultra long-term wave count that I mentioned just a moment ago, where we can continue to top out on a weekly and even monthly basis, possibly annual basis. Broadcom, AVGO, it's been very quiet here. It's got a channel top that's been holding nicely, 391.47. 1 to 2 week swing traders can sell this level, anticipating 343.99, a base of long-term support. If you're looking to buy Broadcom, you're either A, bottom picking 343.99, or you're buying a settlement above 391.47. If we close above 391.47, we're no longer anticipating 343.99, which I do think is likely by the end of August. Closing above 391.47. By the end of August, we could see 457.93 by the end of September anyway. And this could contain monthly buying pressures when tested, but the longer-term framework is certainly bullish above 343.99. And I think if you're looking for an investment-grade opportunity in Broadcom, it would be 343.99. If you're looking for a swing trade. It's selling 91.47, buying 43.99, buying a settlement above 91.47, holding out for 457.93. Let's move on to AMD. Buy a thread holding this channel of support and the low of the high. Low of the high is 495.35. That on the weekly chart is a sell signal unto itself. If we were to close below it, it does correlate still well with this channel bottom at 504.24. Holding above this area, and I'll just jump to that chart right now. We'll keep this midterm channel, near-term channel at 603.11 in reach over the next few weeks. We can top out here on a weekly basis. We've had this. AMD has this tendency to push to new highs and fall back, push to new highs, fall back. And so a 603.11, I think there's two scenarios. Let me back up a little bit. I'm kind of stutter stepping. If you're looking to buy AMD, I think you can do so through August and even into later year. I think this is your zone. And then I think ultimately then you could see this 689.03 formation over the next couple of months. But I think the pull away factor that clarifies 689.03 as a 3 to 5 week objective and climbing would be a settlement above 603.11. Until then, you're buying 595.35, selling 603.11. I'll fall back to this chart here that if we do happen to close this week below 495.35, it is get out of Dodge, stay out of AMD, or play the short side. If we close below 495.35 this week, you may consider reaching for 360 strike out of the money puts that don't expire for. I'd go 6 months out on this play, and it's just a very simple option strategy. You can get very sophisticated with options, but the 6 months out, I don't think this is more than a 2 to 3 month sell-off. And so if you buy a 360 strike that expires, let's say in October, you could actually you look like a genius as the market continues to fall to your strike price. But your premium will vanish by the time you reach its expiration. Let's move on to Palantir, last stock. We did close below this channel bottom at 124.76 last week, but by a hair. So I'm adding this 3 week descending channel bottom at 120.36 to the mix. That if we close below 120.36, that should result in a collapse to the 89.52 channel bottom that's played out really since the highs of November. And this can absorb selling through the rest of the year. We could round back up into the mid 120s again. It also descends by November with this more notable, let's call it low to mid 60s. But I really like 89.52. Let's call that a 1 to 2 month, possibly 2 to 3 week objective below 120.36. If we happen to close back above 124.76, then I think this 155, 167 region in play still by the end of September with present volatility. If we can, I guess I could add this high here, 138.90. I'm not going to type it out, but you can see in the yellow box. If we close above 138.90 now this week, not only above 124.76, then we're probably 2 to 3 weeks away from pushing into this zone. This band of resistance between 155.34 and 167.80 can contain buying on a monthly basis. We can fall away from there, and if settled above, it's off to the races again for Palantir. I'm over the 15-minute mark, but that is what it is, and I'm going to leave it at that for another week of Wicked Market Leaders. You have a great week.